Everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing my spoiler video for Mirror's Edge Catalyst. It's almost been like a full week since I did that video, so I'm finally sitting down to do this spoiler video on it. And the first thing I really want to talk about, really the main thing that I want to talk about for this game and why it doesn't really seem to stand up compared to even the older original version, is the story. And my biggest thing about this story that really bothered me is how cliche it was and how I just knew what was going to happen. And I mentioned this in my spoiler-free review, that there are certain elements, if you played the first game, you can guess for sure how they're going to do certain things. And the big thing that you can guess is that they're going to use her sister. That was a huge thing in the first game. Well, I shouldn't say it was even a huge thing, but it was a part of her story. That was really the only part of Faith that we had that was personal information. It was like, oh, she has a sister that is a cop. And that was one of my favorite things. It was like, I always kind of liked that idea because, as cliche as it might be, it's still interesting because it's always, the person can be either really high up or they can be someone, you know, low on the totem pole. So it's like they can do certain things, they can cover like the tiniest bit of stuff up, or maybe they work for this specific corporation, which is, I think, how it played out in the original game. But like I said, I can't really remember because it's been such a long time. But I think her sister was just a part of like the big kind of conglomerate. She was just one of the cops. And I remember there was one specific scene where you actually run into her during an actual level, and they have a conversation like, you can't be doing this, and this is like as she's been busted, and there are other cops on their way, and they're having this back and forth conversation, and it's like, you got to stop doing this, and they have a nice conversation. Then she's like, you got to get out of here because she doesn't want her sister to go to prison. And I like that idea, and I was curious to see where they would take that. And in this game, they have this stuff where it's like, it starts off, you know, we get some flashbacks as we go throughout the game, and it's like, this is Faith and this is her sister when they're both really young. And the way they do it is fairly obvious because, like, alright, first off, I figured that they would use her sister, and, you know, initially it was like, oh, her family died and stuff, and so at first I was like, oh, well, that kind of sucks, and then I was like, well, maybe she didn't actually die. So as it goes on, we get some flashbacks, and there's a specific portion where Faith leaves her sister, and, you know, it's like they throw some sort of smoke grenade or whatever, and her sister's coughing and stuff, and then she takes off, and I was like, oh, she's probably not dead. Then they do another scene to kind of reassure that she's dead, and so and I thought that was a nice little play. It's like, oh, no, she's dead, because the guy actually is like, he checks her body and is like, oh, she's dead and stuff. And even when that happened, I was like, I'm still not too sure about that, but okay, you know, I was still kind of iffy. And then we get, like, the main enemy, Kruger, he ends up having a daughter. And as soon as she showed up, I was like, oh, well, that's Faith's sister. Like, there is no mystery to that. That was insanely obvious. And what they did that made it even more obvious is they had this thing where in the flashbacks, you could tell who was who, because before they even say each other's names, I'm like, the older sister is Faith. And I was solely basing that on the fact that she wore all black and she had red shoes. Like, the bottom of her shoes were red, and it was all like, it was mostly like freeze frame, so it would be like they'd be in a position and the camera would move around them. And I was like, okay, so they did that, and she's wearing all the black, and then she's got the red on the shoes. I was like, that's good, that's Faith, and the other girl is her younger sister. And that ends up being the case. And once they start saying each other's names, I was like, yep, figured that out. And then as soon as they show her sister, she's still wearing all white, and Faith still has all black with the red. And I'm like, well, that made it even more obvious. They still have the same color. Plus, you know, of course, the main villain could have ended up, you know, marrying an Asian woman. But I was like, the main villain's like an old white guy, and this woman is clearly an Asian woman. So I'm like, that's her sister. And of course, that's how it played out. It was like, oh, that was her sister, and it turns out that she wasn't actually dead. And what they did that I thought was actually pretty cool is like when we first meet her sister, there's a portion where she's like coughing and stuff, and then I think after that they show the flashback where it's like, oh, you know, I think after that is when they show like, oh, she's actually dead. And I think they did that because, like, oh, that makes sense. That's why she was coughing, because that kind of messed her up because she was a really little kid when that happened. So, like, that smoke grenade kind of messed her up, so she has, like, breathing problems for the rest of her life. And I thought that was a nice little touch that they had. And it kind of just knocked her out as a kid, and they just thought she didn't have a pulse. And it turned out that that was wrong. But it was really obvious that that was going to happen. I was like, yep, that's her sister. And that's all I was hoping for. I was like, I hope this isn't going to be I feel like that's even more cliche when it's like, oh, they thought their sibling was dead and their sibling was actually taken by the villain and they're raised to be one of the bad guys. I kind of hate that. I don't know why. I just thought that's gonna suck for this because it was better when they knew who each other were, and it just felt like a better dynamic to me where they know what sides they're on and they know about each other in the original compared to this where Faith thought her entire family was dead, her sister thought her entire family was dead, and then they run into each other, and it took like 2 seconds too. It was like the girl Plastic, she's like looks up this information, it's like, oh, it's not his real daughter and this is a real name, and then it's like, isn't that your sister's name? It's like, yep, she's my sister. And I was like, okay, well, I kind of like the fact that it was just kind of streamlined when they did the explanation, but it was super obvious. And then there's another portion where they have the leader of the runners where he's dead. And I was like, he's probably not dead. And then he wasn't dead, and I was right about that. But he ends up dying in the mission where you save him. And that I thought was a good twist. I was like, I didn't expect that. Like, he ends up actually being alive. But when you finally get to him, you watch him during the cutscene, he actually ends up dying. And I was like, that was a nice little surprise. It sucked because he died. But I thought that was an interesting surprise. And something that they did with the character Icarus. I thought he was going to end up being a villain. And he actually ends up being an okay guy at the end. So that was a little thing that I wasn't expecting. But overall, just going through it, it was like, it just seemed so obvious to me. I was like, this is how it's going to play out. Her sister's going to be the bad guy, or she's going to have been taken by Kruger and raised as one of the villains. And that's exactly what happens. The guy didn't end up dying, which I was right about. He was like fake dead, and then they found him, and then he actually died. But all the stuff I was guessing was going to happen is exactly what happened. It doesn't change the fun of the gameplay, but it certainly changes the fun of the story when you figure everything out ahead of time. Or it's just insanely obvious, which, I don't know, I mean, maybe it wasn't even meant to be a secret with the whole sister thing, especially because I would assume most of the people that played this one played the original, and that was one of the big things about the game is that, Faith had a sister, but her sister was one of the cops, so I don't know, maybe it wasn't even meant to really be a mystery, especially with the way they kind of did it, where it was just like, basically after you find her, like, this same mission is when you get the information, like, you talk to her, and you get a little cutscene, and then as you play that next mission, I believe, is when they kind of give you the full information, like, isn't that your sister's name? And it's like, yep, that's my sister. So they do it really, really fast, and maybe that was a part of it, where it's like, we'll kind of have this mystery, and then once she's actually in the game, it's just like, here it is, yeah, that's her sister. So I understand why they may have done that, but even the mystery itself wasn't any sort of mystery. It's like, that's her sister. They did the color scheme and everything. You could guess how it played out, like, oh, they thought she died, but she didn't actually die, she just passed out, or something like that. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly how it went. And then you get to the end of the game, and I like the end of the game. The end of the game I thought was actually really cool, because they do some stuff with the verticality, which was cool, and like the zipline move I thought was sweet, because a big thing about this game is that they didn't really add anything new to it from the old games. Like, all they did was add like a level up system, so you can be stronger in combat and have more health. But all the moves are exactly the same, except for the zipline stuff. And it's like, you zipline up, you swing, and you can pull stuff down, and that was it. And I'm like, they had the perfect opportunity with a reboot of the game. It's Mirror's Edge. It's the parkour, the first-person parkour game. There are a million other parkour games out at this point, especially, from Ubisoft. That's like all they do. So it's like they should have done something to really step it up. I mean, they had the wall runs and they had, the duck and rolls, but I'm like, they should have done something new with it, like add new moves to it, or better utilize the new stuff that they added, which really was only the zipline thing. And I liked it because they do that a lot at the end, because you're basically just going up that skyscraper, so you like zipline up a lot, and I like that. And they had the portion, and this is one of the things I was like, when I played the ending, I was like, they should have put this in a lot of the game, or at least in certain portions, or had some sort of other obstacles that made it more difficult to run, where you had to like be really, really fast. But they had it where, with all the glass breaking and stuff, I was like, this is actually a really sweet mechanic, because it's really scary because you're running and you see the glass crack, and it's like, if you aren't fast enough, you fall. And I died a couple of times during that portion of the game, and I was like, man, this is the very end of the game, and it's super cool. It was like a hazard just from running, because the glass couldn't support your weight from like the destruction that had already happened around it. It weakened the glass. And I was like, they should have had this in more parts of the game instead of like just the very end. And like the zip lining all the way up, I actually liked that because it was just really cool to visually look at that. Plus, it was fairly fast paced. And it was just like, I wish they added more to it. It was like, I felt like they didn't add any new moves outside of the zipline thing, but they could have added, like, there are just a million different things. They could have added, like, straight dives, like, like, diving forward through, like, small spaces and stuff. They could have done, you know, there are, like, a billion different parkour moves. They could have added so many different things. And they kind of just basically took everything from the first game and were like, let's just put all of that in here, but some of it you have to unlock now through points. And that didn't bother me, the fact that you had to like relearn stuff. And I thought that was an okay mechanic, but like I said, they didn't really add anything new to it. It was just, well, now you have like sort of your running shield you can make longer, and you can have more health and do more damage against other enemies, but you don't really gain anything. And it was like, that really sucks. Like, it feels a little bit pointless to have something like that, and you can't really do anything with it. And they took out certain elements because you can't fire guns in this version of the game, so they took that out, which I thought kind of sucked because I actually didn't mind being able to use guns in the original one, and I didn't too often. I certainly did at certain points because, like, if there are a ton of enemies, you just use guns, and if you want to, at least. You don't have to. You can still take off just like this one, but I kind of felt like that was sort of stupid to take that out. That was a big part of the game. Why not just leave it in there? Like, I don't know. It just seemed kind of stupid to take that out, as if it destroyed the game or something. Like, people can use guns. Just pull the trigger, and that's it. Just hold the gun up. And that was a little disappointing because I actually liked that part of the game in the originals. Like, you could do that, and you'd have limited ammo, but it was just another way to play it. If you wanted to, try to beat someone up and steal their gun, and then you have like a little, action shootout sort of deal. I like that. It was just like a way to kind of change it up on a personal level, and I thought that was pretty cool. And this is just like, you just fight, and that's it. And the combat isn't really that great. I don't really remember it too much from the first one, but I didn't like the combat too much in this either. And I hated, most of all, I hated like the special tough enemies that were like meant to combat runners and stuff. I hated them because they were so broken. All they would do is like this one stupid kick, and it was like they would kick you and she would like fall back. Like, other enemies could punch you, and there's like one enemy that shoots, they shoot guns and they shoot like electric sonic blasts at you and crazy crap like that. And this person just kicks you, and every time they kick you, she'd like fall backwards and have to do like a roll to stand up again. And I'm like, this is so broken as an enemy, because they would just, that's all they did. They would only do that one stupid kick, and it would keep rolling you backwards, and you'd be kind of trapped in this animation until you like jutted yourself to the left or to the right or backwards, so they couldn't hit you with this kick because that's all they had. And you could only do strong attacks on them, which I thought was kind of stupid. They also had it where you could stun enemies, which was also a dumb thing that they didn't really do perfectly, because if you stun an enemy, you get free hits in. And when I was playing, I was like, this is really stupid, because either you get free hits and, they just limit, like, you get 2 free hits, or you get 1 free hit and that's it. But you can't do it where you stun an enemy and then you do a free hit and then you do the same hit, because that was a part of the combat. Like, you can't do the same attack because the enemies will realize what you're doing, so you got to switch it up. But when you're stunned, you shouldn't be able to come out of that, and you would do the same attack twice, and the same rules would apply. Like, you'd hit them once, you'd do the same attack, and then they'd block it and push you back, and then they'd go back into being stunned, and it's like, oh, I get another free hit. And yet they were able to come out of the stun like, oh, that's the same move, and they basically kept the code in there, even when it's stunned. Like, that should have been something they thought about. Like, oh, the enemy's stunned, you either get 1 free hit, or you get multiple free hits. You can't get a hit and then get blocked because you did the same hit. That's like the one time that rule should disappear, but it's just a part of the code even when they're stunned. So I do the same hit, you still have to change it up, even though the enemies are completely stunned, because they'll block you and push you away, but then they'll be completely stunned again. And it's like, that should have been really simple, and that was just something that really bugged me. Like, how did they miss that? Where it's like, they're stunned, you either get 1 free hit or you get multiple free hits. You don't get a hit and then a block because you did the same hit, and then you get another free hit as long as it's different. You just get a free hit, or you get one free hit and they block it. Like, one free hit or multiple hits. That's one or the other. It can't be one hit, can't do the same hit because you'll get blocked, but you can still get a free hit after they came out of the stun, and then they go back into it. So that really bugged me every time I played it. Like I said, the story, though, I just didn't think it was as good as the original one. And then the way they ended the games, I didn't think, this one, I didn't think was as good as the last one either. And this one still ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. It's the same thing. The way they ended, and I was hoping they wouldn't, because I'm like, I don't think this is going to end up getting a sequel, just like the first one. I was like, I hope they don't get super ambitious and try to leave a bunch of stuff open, but it was close to the end. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they will, because there's still a lot to talk about between Faith and her sister. And it all comes down to, you have Faith, who ultimately survives, her sister survives, and then Kruger seems to die at the end of the game. I thought she saved him, but apparently he dies. So, like, her sister ends up taking over for Kruger's sec, and Faith is still a runner, and that's kind of where it ends. It's like, oh, he died, and she had this moment with her sister, and her sister saved her life, but she's like, I still have to go back to Kruger because he still raised me, so I still see him as my father. Even though now I know more of the truth, I still have to go try to save him. And I don't know if he's actually, I mean, that was one of the things, like, he was calling for help, and then she went to help him, and then she was on, like, a helicopter, and she's, you know, looking down at Faith, and I didn't see him, but I didn't think he was actually dead, and it's like, oh, he disappeared and stuff, and I'm like, you think she would have looked sad or something on the plane, or on the helicopter, but she seemed, like, just monotone and emotionless. So I was like, I don't know, but the way it ended with kind of that opening is just like, I don't like that, you know, especially now, because with the first game, I was fine. I didn't think that it would, you know, never get a sequel. Like, I just didn't expect that at the time. I thought it was a fun game, and, you know, it was really sad when I heard that they weren't going to do a sequel, and then they did the same thing with this one, and they ended on a cliffhanger again, and like I said, in a spoiler-free review, I think this one was admittedly a bit worse than the last one, because the open world aspect kind of shows you how little there is to really enjoy. The missions kind of suck. There's really nothing to it. It's like, it's just running, and that's it. Like, you just run, and that's all you do. It's not, like, super exciting. They could have done something really great with the open world aspect and multiplayer, even if it was just one other person running with you. But I would have loved it if they did something open world. The world was big enough. I loved the look of the world, because they had the one section of the game that looked like the old one. They had, like, a cool neon portion where there are a bunch of billboards and, you know, fancy locations and stuff. So it was like, you know, one portion is normal where it's like white, yellow, and red, and then the other portion of the game had a lot of black and blue, sort of neon colors, or like black, blue, and white. And then another portion of the game was kind of like the really rich people portion, and there was like a lot of pink and purple and blues, and they had like a bunch of cherry blossom trees all over the place. And I was like, I like how, you know, the different sections look really different. I love that idea of the game, and I feel like there's so much they could have done with that in multiplayer, instead of just, oh, you just make a little challenge and you see little, you know, images of runners. Like, have it where you can do customization on characters, or anything. I don't know, like, just something. Like, just do something with it. But instead, it was just exactly what I expected, and that was really disappointing. I was like, I hope that they'll do something with this multiplayer, and it just ended up being exactly what I thought it was going to be. And I don't think I even knew there was going to be multiplayer until I played it, and the first thing I thought was like, I hope it's not like I think it's going to be, and it was exactly what I thought. It's just, hey, just do a little challenge, and then you see, like, an image of someone else playing. I was like, great. You know, we could run around, maybe do missions together, something like that. Just even if, like I said, it was just one person, just something I think would have been really great. But they just didn't really utilize it like I felt they really could have. And the story of the game, I don't think, was as entertaining, because, like I said, how they ended with the cliffhanger for this one, and it was like, oh, her sister took over, and she kind of went back to being a runner, but they defeated Kruger, at least, and Kruger Sec is kind of messed up at this point, and, you know, if they stop, like, the ultimate thing from taking over all the humans. And then, in the original game, you find out that one of Faith's friends is actually one of the villains. Like, this is, like, the main villain, like, your nemesis throughout the entire game that's been going up against you, that's been teaching these new runner cops to take on a bunch of the messengers and stuff. And I thought that was a great reveal at the end. Like, you finally defeat her, and you like knock her helmet off, and you find out it's one of your fellow runners, and that's where it ends. And she's been working with the enemy the whole game, and you're kind of just stunned, and it's like, holy crap. And that's where it ends. And then I was excited to see where they take that, because now you know who your nemesis has been the entire game. And I felt that was a cooler reveal at the end than it just ended and they didn't really get enough time to talk, so you know they have to talk it out later. And that's pretty much how it goes. So, you know, I still hope it gets a sequel, because I'm a sucker for story. I just want to see it have a conclusive ending, because they've done it twice now, and I really wish they didn't waste their time doing a reboot. I wish they just made this a full-on sequel. And I mean, really, what they should have done was just been like, hey, this is a sequel, you buy this game, you get the first one free. The game's like 10 years old at this point. They could have easily done that and be like, look, you get a free digital download if you need it to refresh yourself on this story. Boom. They should have done that and just made this a direct sequel, because that's what I really wanted. And when they were like, oh, it's a prequel reboot thing, I was like, I don't think I like that idea, because they're like they even said like, oh, we're changing up elements. I was like, I like exactly how the first game went. They should just carry on from there, because it had a good cliffhanger, and just build up from there and just add elements to that. Say it's been a couple years and make all the changes you guys want. It's just been a couple years, boom, and just take it from there. And it was easy. Just your former friend was the enemy, and that's the last game. And they could have even made a recap at the beginning of the game, like this is what happened in the last one. But ultimately, I think they didn't really do anything great with this one, and that's really sad, because I love the first game. It was one of those like dream things where it's like, I want this to get a sequel so bad, because I love the story. I actually enjoyed the game more than a lot of other people did, but I had fun with it, and I loved that ending. I liked, you know, that twist ending, and I wanted to see it continue. And then they came out with this, which basically wipes away the old one, and we still end up with something that ends on a cliffhanger and probably won't get a sequel. And that's the worst thing about it. They got like ambitious again, like they were making something phenomenal, and they didn't. It was fairly bland. The missions, you know, like honestly, I felt, and I think I said this in my spoiler-free review, this game should have just been like the first one. If it wasn't open world, I think maybe that would have been a little bit better, because it was, you know, like I said, been forever since I played the first one, but a bit more fast-paced. It's more current. You could just tell like how action-packed it was in certain portions. It was just a bit more fast-paced of a story. You lose people fairly quickly, and the story just moves fast-paced. You get introduced to new characters on a fairly steady basis as long as you go through the story, and things do continue to change, and you lose allegiances and you gain them, and it's like, I don't trust this person, and they, you know, these characters are really radical and stuff, and I like that idea. It was just like, you know, with the addition of the open world, it was kind of like, you know, there's so much to do in between missions, but it's not super entertaining. The craziest thing I think I did was start a war with my friend, because I hacked one of his TV screens. He was like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And he sent me like a bunch of messages on my PlayStation. I was like, he started a war, man. And he went around the whole game hacking every terminal. So I have to do that. That was probably like the craziest thing I did outside of the story mode, was just messing around with my buddy, trying to out-hack all the terminals that he hacked in my game. And that was really it. And that's kind of sad. But those are my feelings on the game. I do hope it gets a sequel, just because I want a Mirror's Edge game to just have a definitive ending. But I want to know what you guys thought about the game. You know, favorite parts, least favorite parts. So please comment below. Let me know.